guys, welcome to a new video. Today we are going to be looking at all of the books that I've completed so far in the month of March, and I'm going to be giving y'all my thoughts on these books. Let's get into it. I always forget to tell y'all about the puzzles that I've been doing. In March I have completed one puzzle, that being Bookish Cats, a 500-piece puzzle. I made it back to Mud Puppy. I got this one for my family for Christmas in 2025. I love cats and I love literature. This one was made for me. Mud Puppy is definitely my favorite puzzle brand, and this one just really went well because sometimes I'll have issues with the pieces actually connecting where maybe it could connect to multiple pieces. That's what it seems like, but no, it doesn't. But this one was really high quality compared to other Mud Puppy puzzles that I've done in the past. I did do it pretty quickly when watching movies. Yes, I would recommend the Bookish Cats Mud Puppy puzzle. As for the books, we're going to be going from most recently read all the way to the first book that I read this month. The first book that I have to talk about is The Dead Lake by Hamid Ismailov, and it was translated from the Russian by Andrew Bromfeld. This is one that I would recommend with a maybe because I did give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Let's talk about our characters. This is a short 100 and something page book. I didn't feel a huge connection to our main character of Johannes. This is a coming of age story for him. We first meet him when he's 27 years old, and then he tells his story of his past, of how he got to be where he is and why he is the way that he is. I didn't feel a huge connection towards him. I didn't dislike him, didn't like him, like I didn't feel anything. With our side characters, that's where it got really confusing because we had these two houses that are out in the middle of nowhere in Soviet Kazakhstan. The two houses are for the railroad workers and their families. That being Johan's family and Azlu, who is our like romantic interest, I guess. They're kids, but that's how it's written. We had them, then their parents' generation, then the grandparents. And they all call, they're not blood related, but they call uncle, aunt, whatever, granny to one another's families. That was so confusing to read about. I wish there had been a family tree. Sure, I could have made one of my own, but like, a reader shouldn't have to do that when it could be provided, or the author could clarify it more. The atmosphere was definitely my favorite part. As I said, this is in Soviet Kazakhstan. I would say probably in the 70s. That's a rough estimate of when this is taking place because I had to use Soviet pop culture references for that. Imagine that research. It was fun. But it just really shows, this goes with the plot as well, you can't really trust what the government is doing to the environment and to its citizens because this is based on fact. For decades, the Soviets were testing atomic weapons. The amount is insane on this part of rural Kazakhstan. And sure, you're like, it's rural, it's remote, whatever. No, there was a population there, and in this book we are seeing the impact that those atomic tests had on the animals, the environment, ecosystem, and the physical impacts that it has on the people themselves. It's literally crazy that a government is like, let's test bombs where there's a population. And that's, as I said, kind of going in with the themes and plot of the book, as well as just seeing what the Soviet government was doing to its citizens by testing these atomic bombs in a populated area, and how the ecosystem and people, they're not always at the best interests of the government because they're playing war games and not really caring, giving a hoot, to be PG, about what they're doing to citizens. The writing was where I also had issue. I ultimately think it might fall on the translation. As I did say at the start, this is translated from Russian. That it was very sporadic, fast-paced. I had a hard time following the story. And as I said, it's fast. So and I did read this physically, but ow, that hurt. It's very fast-paced, and we had like some Kazakh folklore that I was having a hard time following because I don't know anything about their culture and customs, so I was really confused with that. There's just ultimately a lot of confusion with this book, but I do think It is making a good point. I do think this is an important story to be told, and I definitely do think there is an audience out there for it, so that's why I'm recommending it with a I do have to tell y'all, I am filming this while battling pollen allergies. I am taking breaks like every 2 books. Just to put that out there. Next, the book that I had to talk about is an ebook. We'll insert a picture of that, and that is The March by Ben Kane. This is one that I would also recommend with a maybe. I wish this had been a prequel rather than a sequel to his series, because it's such a great taste of what you're going to get in that main series. He does a great job at putting you back into the heads of these characters and understanding their motives. Again, side characters did get kind of confusing because there's so many of them and not enough time to develop, as this is just a novella. But the atmosphere, again, was my favorite part, and also very similar atmosphere to this, as we are in Central Asia in ancient times. If you love the exploring and action aspects of the Forgotten Legion series by Ben Kane, you're going to love this. It's not going to have the political intrigue that we see in the main series, but the adventure, the action, exploring the ancient world, you're going to get all of that. And I do love the exploring part of the world, because when I am in an open world video game, the first thing and the main thing I'm going to be doing when playing that game is exploring, being a nomad. That's what I do in video games, and that's what Ben Kane has done with some of the plot lines in his book series and in this book as well. We are going all over Central Asia in this, again, very short book, but we're going a lot of places in it. The writing, I have no issue with the writing. Again, it's just so similar to his main series that this is just such a great taste. So maybe if you're missing that main series, give this a go, because you're missing the characters, missing that world, and wanting to just know more about it and maybe what happened to some of the characters in the main series. This would be a great place to go. Very like action movie. Again, if you like action, battles, you're going to get that here. I don't want to say full on battles, more like fighting, but skirmishes, if you will. That's what you're getting here. You're not going to have the political intrigue, but if you like fighting, exploring, this is for you. At a 3.25 out of 5 stars. I have a mood read to talk about now, and that is Monstrilio by Gerardo Simona Cordova. Gosh, look at that cute little guy. I don't know who he is, but that little guy, he's cute. Let's talk about the characters. The characters and their writing is so interconnected in this that I did really love that, because we have the POV of 4, 5, a handful of characters, and the writing style changes for each one of them, and really I think that connects you to the characters a lot. It's hard to say who my favorite was. Joseph was definitely the one who I felt the most immersed into his shoes and was feeling what he was feeling, and I didn't expect to have a connection with that character, just didn't expect that. But Magos was the one where I really felt this story, that I was most intrigued, most engulfed in the story. She's the one where I was like, yes, this is everything I've heard about Monstrilio. That's what that is. And I did say this in my written review, but I feel like after Magos, the story just gets kind of lost. I did love this book. I gave it a 3.75, which that rounds up to a 4 star. So yes, I would recommend it, but I do think it loses a bit of where it's going once we leave Magos's POV and go to the other characters. But hers is where you most feel like this is what Monstrilio is. Everything you know about Monstrilio, you're going to feel it in those Magos chapters. The atmosphere, I didn't do a whole lot. We start out in Mexico City, which I enjoyed because I haven't read that many books that take place in Mexico. Again, a handful, but not that many. And especially in a modern setting like this, I thought that was super cool. We even go to Berlin and New York City. We're going all over the world. And I mean, that's what, 2 continents that we're going to in 3 countries. That's fun. And it does have that classic Gothic feel at times, but it wasn't, I wouldn't straight up say it's Gothic, but there were vibes at times where I'm like, ooh, this feels like a classic. I'm liking that. With the writing, as I said, very connected with the characters, and I just loved how each character had their own writing style, because it really makes them, it fleshes them out, it makes them feel different. The past 2 books we've talked about, I've talked about how the characters, it was hard to tell apart, but in this, the author did a very good job at make those characters all be an individual person, and I really appreciated that. But the plot is really ultimately about grief and how it's all different for everybody. I experienced this back in February of just how everybody handles grief differently when you lose somebody that you love, and that you can't force somebody to grieve the way that you do. And I don't think you should judge somebody else for how they grieve. And you can be grieving the same thing, the same person, the same experience, but it's going to be different for each individual who is going through that. I've also seen people saying that this is about loving somebody who is different. It could be a parent who has a child who might have autism, or a child who is gay, or, you know, something that is different than the parent, which I can definitely see that reading this. So I can see how that would be a theme, but it wasn't one that that wasn't my main takeaway from the book, if you will. But I do think you do see that here, and I do think that's really important, because I do think a lot of people will find relatability in that. Also can see how grief can just manifest. You can let grief take advantage of you, and it's not always going to be for the better, but you might think it's for the better, and maybe a handful of people do, but ultimately in the long run, is it really healthy? Is this thing you're doing to cope, is it a healthy coping mechanism? This is a book that's very thought-provoking, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a while. We have my graphic novel pick of the month to talk about now, and that is The Magic Fish by Truly Nigan. I'm sorry, I always mess up the name. No disrespect, because I did enjoy this, and I do think this is great for a young audience, but that's not... We'll get there. We'll get there. Hold on. Be patient. Patience is a virtue. Did you learn that from Game of Thrones? Yeah, I did. But this is showing the power of storytelling, of literature, of fairy tales. That's what my whole channel is about. This book sums it up perfectly, of just how powerful storytelling is. And it's been going on for millennia, you know, for thousands of years. People have been telling stories, and as this is about a young person, I think he's in middle school in the 1990s. He is just trying to find himself, and he does have a bit of a language barrier with his parents because they're immigrants, and he doesn't know how he can express himself to his parents and if they're going to be okay with him coming out to them. That he can find solace in literature, find relatability in literature, and in this case it's fairy tales. And I think that's so powerful, because you can go through awful times, but go to a good book and it just can take you out of what you're going through in life, but also be like, yes, I relate to this so much. It's so empowering. There's so much power in stories, and that is why I do what I do. That's why I come on here and recommend books to y'all, because everybody can find themselves. They can also understand why somebody might be the way that they are, why they believe what they believe, even if you don't believe in it, but just to get an understanding of people. And I think that ultimately makes the world a better place, and literature has the power to do that. But I will say the writing in here was a bit choppy. I find this often in graphic novels, where I'll be reading and I'll think I missed a page, and I'm like, okay, where's that other page? Where is it? But no, it ultimately just ends up being choppy. But I do think this is a great and powerful story. I just don't see myself rereading it, but I do think it's great for younger readers. We also have all of this in the back, which to me was too much. I'm like, I don't need all of that, but I have to remind myself this is meant for middle grade readers, that they're not going to have the media literacy level that I have as a 26-year-old. They're still learning and developing. I mean, they're half my age. I do think that's great for a younger audience to get an understanding of, oh, this is why that is the way that it is. And yeah, I think that's great for them, but a little overbearing for me. But again, I'm not the target audience, but I do think this is a good book, and if it sounds intriguing, pick it up. Last book that I have to talk about is Stone Fox by John Reynolds Garnier. This is the book that I read with my book club, the Raindrops book club over on Fable, and this is also one that I would recommend with a maybe. It is a middle grade book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. With the characters, they're so wholesome. I felt so much for these characters. When we have a child character who just gets a lot thrown on their shoulders, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to give them a big hug and help them out. I get really emotionally connected to those characters. you are going to have to suspend your disbelief just a little, but I do think the author is self-aware of that. Just reading between the lines as an adult, you can definitely see. But for a kid, I think fantastic. They're going to love it. The atmosphere, this just reads so classically American. Think like the Polar Express is something that I thought of. I even thought of John Steinbeck at times, Ernest Hemingway. Just think of classic American writers. I do get that vibe from this. This is taking place probably sometime in the first half of the 20th century in Jackson, Wyoming. I was going to say a small town, but I don't think Jackson's that small. Is it? I don't know. But it's taking place there. And this is such a moving story of sometimes you have to give it your all. And that can hurt so much. It can take so much from you. But that's what survival is. This is a survival story. And being there for your family, helping somebody who cannot help themselves. And I do think that's just such a great story for a young audience to read, and such a moving story. This is my copy from when I read this as a little kid. I think this one I think was published in 2003, this edition. So I've had this book for quite a while. And such a moving story that I do think is an important read. It does have illustrations as well, and I think that's always so great. And it just shows the power of friendship between human and animal. I love when stories do that. Y'all know I love animal stories. So if you have any suggestions, let me know down below in the comments. But those are all the books and the puzzle that I completed in the month of March. I hope you guys have a happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. But the day that you're seeing this is St. Patrick's Day. So I'm not wearing green yet. Don't pinch me, please. I'll try to wear green tomorrow. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave a green emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye. If you are familiar with my videos, you're used to seeing Sherman at the end of them. Sadly, Sherman has since passed away, but I would still like to encourage you guys to help your local shelters. Sherman was at the Darlington County Humane Society in rural South Carolina. I always have their link down below in the description if you guys would like to help them, but also help your local shelters as well. You can do that by donating, sharing posts like this one, volunteering, fostering, and adopting, which it's great to do all of those things. Great to help your community, great to help the animals in your community, and I cannot recommend it enough. All of my pets were rescues, they were strays or from animal shelters, and I love them so much, and I know how much love they can give, so knowing these pets at the shelter can equally give that much love, it's amazing. And y'all should totally take part and help out those local animal shelter pets, and please help them.